Hi guys! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am happily chewing some gum right now. If you're new here, hi, I'm Caroline. I write about books, vlog about books, talk about books, and read books, of course. And if you are returning, welcome back. The end of March. I actually think March was probably my biggest month to read books, like ever, in like the last 2 years. So I should probably start off by saying I signed up for a Kindle this month, which basically contributed a lot to the amount of reading I did. But I thought I would try out the Kindle, which I wrote a blog post about, which I can link down below. I can also do a video about what it's like to have a Kindle subscription, because let me tell you, before I got my Kindle subscription, I did not realize what I was buying. Now that I do have it, it has its place. There are some good points and there are also some bad points, but I'm still not completely sold on it, but it's okay for now. So let's dive into this month. So obviously, I actually had to resort to writing all of my books down in my planner, because had I have not done that, I don't actually think I would have been able to remember all the books I read, which is insane, because I've never had that experience before. But anyway, so I think in total I read about 25 books this month, which was pretty big when you think on average I read about 9 to 10 books a month. So yeah, I actually think I might have to adjust my reading goal if I read over 10 books next month, because at the moment I will be hitting my goal by like August. So anyway, let's dive into the books I read. So I actually, before I continue on, I should say that I actually tried out a completely new genre this month. I I've always been a romance lover. Obviously the last kind of year and a half, the content from me has been more YA based and or fantasy based. Because I always have loved fantasy, but I kind of felt after the age of about 17 that fantasy kind of became a bit monotonous, and I didn't really find anything that I was enjoying. So I kind of deviated then into the romance genre, and I just loved it. And then it's only been recently that I've kind of gone back into fantasy, and it's really changed a lot since then. And that's why I'm still trying to catch up on a lot of books. Like A Court of Thorns and Roses, I only just first read that last year. So yeah, but let's go back into what I read this month. So the first book I read this month was Wild Nights in Texas. And this book was okay. It was pretty short, to be honest with you. I think it wasn't even 250 pages. So very, very, very short book. It was sweet. It was really cute. I mean, it was a country western romance, which I have a really big crush for. In saying all of that, I would have thought it would have been a bit longer. But it was basically just a second chance romance. There's something sticking out of this book, and I don't know what it is. Huh. There's literally something just sticking out of the cover. That's just so weird. Can you see that? No. Oh, there you go. No, not really. Anyway, but basically, yeah, it was just a second chance romance of, you know, this girl who was a TV star, and she goes back to her small little town of Texas and reconnects with her love, and that was pretty much the plot line. It was very cute, very western, very country. I mean, one day I would love to live in a small town in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. It it just kind of appealed to my heart in that sense. So that book there, I think I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, so that was the first book I read. Then the second book I read was Crave, which obviously, again, I'm late to the party, well aware of that. Yeah, I have to say I don't understand the hype behind this book. In theory, it sounded fantastic. I really thought it was, like, I can understand why it's called the modern day Twilight for, you know, like today's teens and stuff, but personally, I just thought it was lacking. I don't know what it is either. Like, obviously, with this book and a few other books that I've read in fantasy or urban fantasy, dragons are becoming a thing, which is cool, but I just don't really like dragons, so it just doesn't really gel with me. I'm a vampire, werewolf, witch kind of girl. Dragons just don't make sense. I suppose because there's a little part of me that's always like, oh, there is a possibility that vampires could exist in like a small little town, or like witchcraft and stuff. So I think that's why, and I'm just like, when it gets to like dragons and like shapeshifters and stuff, and I'm just like, that's just definitely not real. So there's just no way I could even imagine it in my head. So I think that's probably why Shrek's my least favorite animated cartoon, Fiona the Princess. So yeah, that was okay. I'm yet to read the second book. Definitely do not think I will be reading the third book. It just doesn't grapple with, the hooks in this book just aren't as strong as what some of the other books that I have read in this genre are. In saying that, everyone really likes it, so just my opinion. The next thing I did was, I was lucky enough to be a part of a read-along with Tandem book collection in the UK with Sarah J. Maas and Bloomsbury, so thank you all to those. So I got to reread House of Earth and Blood, which is up there with one of my absolute favorite books. And it was really nice to be able to just do prompts and things like that along with the book, because it really got you thinking on a different level. And I often find books like this, like A Court of Silver Flames, they're books that you really do need to go back and reread. Sorry, that was my hand. They're books you really do need to go back and reread, because there's a lot of times you miss things, or things have been set and you just kind of skim over it because you're just like, I just got to finish this book, you know? Everyone's going to start talking about it and I don't want to miss out. I want to be a part of the talking and stuff like that. So definitely with this book, going back and rereading it has been beneficial and a lot of fun. So now, in no particular order, my school principal used to say that before they were calling out awards. So in no particular order, I'm going to read out the books that I read on my Kindle. So let me get up their photos for you. So this is also extremely cliche, but obviously I have a TikTok account, and you communicate a lot with bookstagrammers or booktalkers because it's on TikTok, and you kind of get an understanding of a whole different genre because it's a completely different algorithm, so you get to see different books, which is something that I really, really enjoy about BookTok, because I feel like with Instagram, I'm kind of pigeonholed into one area, and no matter how hard I try, I just can't get out of that one area. So it's really nice to have TikTok to kind of broaden my horizons. And so one of the series of books that keeps popping up on TikTok is the Madison Kate series, and by author Tate James, who is another indie author. So if you are an indie author lover, you know that I love and support indie authors with every breath of my body. And I can now officially say Tate James has become up there with one of my favorite authors as well, which is fantastic. So basically everyone was talking about Madison Kate. Then I went on Tate James's TikTok page, and she was like talking about all her new books coming up, and you know, she just finished writing a book. And then one of the questions in one of the videos she was answering was about MK, and she was like, no, MK's got her happily ever after, blah blah blah. And I was like, let's give MK a go. So I downloaded, at first I was like, let's buy the book. And then I saw the price of the book and I was like, oh my God, this is an expensive series. And it was also all sold out, which didn't help. So then I had a look on Kindle and I saw that I could buy it via Kindle Unlimited. And I was like, okay. So that's what started my Kindle Unlimited journey. And boy, was it a rabbit hole we went down. And so basically, I read the first book in the series, which was Hate. And I read this book in, can we see that? I read this book in like 5 hours. It was insane. It was so good. So this was also my first taste at reverse harem and kind of bully romance in a way, but it wasn't really bully romance, it's just more reverse harem. So it was my first taste of that. So when I first read that Madison Kate was reverse harem, I was like, okay, what the hell does this mean? Whatever. Everyone's talking about it and everyone's saying how good it is, so let's just give it a go. And then when I realized reverse harem meant that one girl with multiple guys, and each of the guys in these books are like just to die for. You just couldn't choose. And she gets them all. I was like, done, I'm in. I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to read this. So I read Hate, which basically I loved. I gave it 5 stars. From Hate, I then read the second book in the series, which is called Liar, number 2. I'm actually going to do another video on MK, so I will talk a bit more about the series. I also wrote a extended review in my blog, so I'll put that all in another video. But then I read the third book in the series, which was Fake. This was number 3. And the fourth book is Kate, obviously. So Kate was the biggest book. I think it was about 500 pages. All the others were like 290, 350 kind of ish. So it wasn't too bad. Ideally, I would have loved for them to come in a box set like the Kit Davenport series, because that was just all in one big book. So you just kind of kept reading, which was great. But it also meant that it was like a really, really big book. Took me a long time to get through. So then I finished reading the MK series and I was like, oh my God, I'm in love with Tate James. So I gave all those books 5 stars. The whole series 5 stars. I'm like, anyone who hasn't read it yet, like what the hell are you doing? Get out of your rock, go read that series. You need to if you want to survive life. And let's be honest, everyone's life is boring compared to MK's, so you just need to do it. And then, so from there I read 7th Circle, which is a spin-off, which follows Hades, who is the owner of the Timberwolves. I don't know, the boss of the Timberwolves. I don't know how you would describe Hades. Just like she is Timberwolves. I don't know. But so I read 7th Circle, which it was nice. I liked it, but what I didn't like, all of her books end on cliffhangers. All of Tate James's books end on cliffhangers, which is all fine and good if you've published all of the books, because people can just keep going on. Like, it can just continue to read, and then you know, you finish the book and you finish all the cliffhangers and you can put the story to rest. Whereas with 7th Circle, the other 3 books aren't published yet. Well, when I read it, they weren't published yet at the time. The second book was coming out a week later, which was frustrating because when you leave things on a cliffhanger, people kind of don't really have the attention span to sit and stew over a book for like months. And so at the time I was like, oh, it's okay because the next book's coming out the following week. And so then, yeah, I read the next book, obviously, which was Anarchy. And I mean, I gave the first book, Seventh Circle, I gave that 4 stars. And Anarchy, I gave 3 stars. And the reason why for the scoring was Seventh Circle was good. It wasn't as steamy as the MK series, I suppose, because the steaminess kind of happens from the second book onwards. And then when I read the second book, I was really disappointed. It just wasn't as good. I found myself, obviously, Tate James writes really, really strong female characters, strong leads, but I felt like perhaps Hades was too domineering and strong, and it was annoying. I don't know, like I just didn't find Anarchy as interesting as what I found Seventh Circle and the MK series. In saying all of that, like it finished on a horrible cliffhanger, which just had me so angry and upset at the time, because the character that it was involving with is probably one of my favorite characters, and I was like, how can you do this to me? And now I have to wait till June for the next book, so I was really upset, but yeah, it was still a great story, don't get me wrong. I just feel like I just really get frustrated when things end on such large cliffhangers that are like people are dead cliffhangers, and then I have to wait like a year for the next book. It's just not fun at all. Okay, so those were like the Tate James, and then so from there I was like, okay, well, I still really love Tate James, so like I want to read something else of Tate James. So then I decided to dive into the Kit Davenport series, which the first book was The Vixen's Lead. So this book was really hard to get into, I'm not gonna lie. To be honest with you, I didn't like the start. I kind of flicked through the first 100-ish pages. It was very difficult to get into. For me as well, when you have reverse harem, I sometimes get really confused because you've got multiple guys and you're talking about he, him, his, like, and I'm like, which one is it? Like the guy with this hand, or the guy with that hair, or the guy with, like, it gets confusing because I'm like, who are you talking about? Like, I just don't get it. So I understand that's kind of the plight of the author as well, because in their head they're thinking it's like this, but then to kind of describe it, like you have multiple he's and hims, and it is very difficult. I get that completely, but it is translated into the reader. Like it was difficult for me to understand, and especially because like I didn't understand what was going on at all. Like what the hell was going on at all? It was really, really, really difficult. But basically, the Kit Davenport series is a high fantasy, paranormal romance, probably more paranormal romance fantasy than high fantasy. And it follows this, it's actually set in high school. It follows Kit, who goes to this high school, and then these 2 random guys show up, and she starts to fall for one, and then like all these other guys like randomly like come into her life, and then she basically works out they're all from Team Alpha, which is her foster dad's like secret spy organization. And so then basically she falls in love with all 6 of these guys. Well, actually it's 5, and then one of the guys has a brother, and then he kind of joins the group as well. And then like they kind of work out that Kit actually has the power to like heal people and restore them back to like their paranormal abilities. And so basically then there's just like this epic fight between good and bad, and that's the book. It's great. So there's 6 books in that series, 6.5 actually, because there's a novella. But so the first book was The Vixen's Lead. The second book is The Dragon's Wing. The third book is The Tiger's Ambush. And so basically what happened throughout each book was kind of for each guy. So during each book, she would kind of get closer to each guy until eventually she bonded the guy to her. And so then they became like this super bond thing that made them last forever. And number 4 was the Viper's Nest. So that's why there's 6, because there were 6 guys, so 6 books. And then The Crow's Murder. That's book number 5. And book number 6 was The Elfer's Pack. And then the novella, which was really, really fun, I thought. Like, it was really nice. It was just kind of like, you know, 2 years later, this kind of little hiccup happened, and yeah, it was really, really nice. And then that was the novella, it was The Hellhound's Legion. So then that was that series. So then basically after that, I was like, there's not really anything else that Tate James has written that I was like interested in. There was a few books I was like, maybe, but the covers, I don't know, Tate James, you just need to get some better covers, love. Like, your books are fantastic, but your covers don't reflect that. Especially for that series, the Kit Davenport series. I just didn't find that they reflected it. The other thing that I found a bit strange was there was a lot of similar scenes from Kit Davenport and Madison Kate. There was a few things, especially because I read the series back to back. There was a few things I was like, that exact thing happened in the other book. And I can give you like the perfect example. So in Madison Kate, there was like one point where she was like really, really mad, and so she went to the gym and she was like running on the treadmill, and basically then Cody walks in and slaps his hand on the treadmill and it just randomly stops. That exact same thing happened in Kit Davenport when Kit was running on the treadmill because she was frustrated, and then Cole came in and he slapped the treadmill, and then they ended up basically having sex. So, but the idea is it's the exact same scene. So I found that a bit strange. But anyway, I still loved the scene, don't get me wrong, great scene. But I just was like, there's similarities here. The next thing I read, because I am a chick lit kind of like softie, was Pink Bits by J.B. Heller. And this literally gave chick lit its name. It was cute, funny, flirty. Basically, Regan is, she runs the blog Pink Bits and is the queen of random facts. And Rhett walks into her room naked. He's her next door neighbor. He walks in naked, and then all of a sudden, she drops the hammer on her glass table and ends up with glass on her foot, and he looks after her for the whole week, and then they fall in love. And it was just so beautiful, and it was just like, if only falling in love was just that easy. Yeah, everyone would be doing it. But there was that one. I think I gave that 3 or 4. I think I gave it 4 stars. So there's that. Then I really took on board the suggestions coming in from my Kindle, and I was like, let's keep rolling with this because I'm enjoying these. So the next thing I read, which another thing you may not know about me, but I am a complete and total slut for I am a slut for NFL books or NHL books or any sports romance books, especially set in college scenes. They just make me wish that that was just me. I love them so much. It takes a lot to not get 5 stars in a college sports romance book from me. And I'm talking like I just hand out 5 stars like they're pills at a popping weekend. Seriously. But so then I read Shameless King by Maya Hughes, and I loved it so much I actually bought a lot of these books. I loved so much. I was like, there's no way I can have these on my Kindle. I need to buy them and have them in hardback and hug them every night and just cry into the pages and let them feel my tears because I love them so much. So basically, yeah, I bought that one. It was just beautiful, that book. And it followed, I forgot her name. It's been a big month, all right? Relax, chill out, guys. So basically it followed Mac and Declan, and they met in high school, and it starts off with a prelogue of them at prom, and Declan sees Mac walk in. Mac is short for McKenna, And he's like, oh my god, she's gorgeous. And then it shuffles forward to like 2 years later. And McKenna hates Declan because of something that happened, but we don't know. And then all of a sudden Declan turns up on campus, and then basically this book is set in college, but it follows the group of high school friends. And so the next books in the series are all going to be equally as fun, and I will let you all know about them. But basically Declan and McKenna get together, and it's just, he needs help with his assignment because if he doesn't pass his course, he will get kicked off the hockey team, and if he gets kicked off the hockey team, he can't make pro. So Mac, being the smart bookworm that she is, I know, talking to us all, like she's just, I think that was why I fell so in love with this book, because McKenna had so many similarities to me. And so that was why it was really easy to connect. And I feel like a lot of people that read this book would be like, oh, I'm like, I see McKenna in me, or me and McKenna, because, you know, she's the shy little nerdy bookworm in the corner, and what are we all? The shy nerdy little bookworm. So yeah, so that one was great. And then I read this, and I think this book is probably going to be my favorite book of the year, and my favorite series of the year. To accurately describe to you how much I love this book, I read it until 5:30 in the morning. Like, I did not stop from 9 o'clock at night. It's called Dynasty, and I could not stop reading it for the love of God. I tried to stop reading about 4 times, and every time I'd close it and close my eyes, my brain was like, oh my god, what's happening next? Oh my god, like, and it would just go over and over and over. And so I was like, you know what? Screw it. And so I'd pick it back up, and then I'd start reading it again. I just could not put it down. Basically, it's another reverse harem, and there's 4 boys. And so what happens is Winter doesn't know anything about herself. And so she gets moved from foster home to foster home to foster home. And she ends up at this foster home with these 2 foster parents who are just atrocious. And so from there, she basically enrolls herself. She's only got like a few months left before she turns 18, and she's just trying to get through school so she can turn 18 and GTFO out of that house. And so then she basically goes to this party, and this black Escalade drives up, and these hot as hell guys get out, and Winter like stares them down, and they all stare her down, and then this random girl comes up to her and she's like, those guys are like untouchable at this school. And she's like, oh, well, I don't care. And then, oh, the tension in this book. Wow. Oh my god. The tension in this book was just phenomenal. And so basically then I went from that book to the next book, which was Damaged. Again, books that end on cliffhangers. People don't like them. Like, I get that they're like great if you're like, you know, a new author, or like, you know, just an author that's increasing revenue, because the moment you release 3 books in a series, you're gonna make 3 times the amount of money as if you would release 1 book, and that was like the whole series. Like, I get that, but then like release them like a month apart. Like, come on. There's a really good series that I loved, which was called The Academy. Basically, it was a reverse harem. I didn't know that at the time when I was reading it. I was like 16, and I had no idea that it was a reverse harem. Now looking back on it, I'm like, duh. And it wasn't called reverse harem back then. It was just in a polygamous relationship, which was still fine. But yeah, the author released 2 series. One was a YA and one was a more adult kind of version of it. But she released, every book ended on a cliffhanger, and the next book was out the next month. So it was fantastic. Unfortunately, the author hasn't finished the series off or released any new books, because I really loved The Academy, and the second series was a Scarab Beetle series. I loved the Scarab Beetle series way more. That gives me an idea though. Maybe I should check up and see if there is more of that. Anyway, let's keep it moving. So I read Damage, which is the second book in the Boys of Winter series. which was just even better. So we're kind of delving deeper into like Dynasty, because this is this secret organization. It's called Dynasty, and you know, Winter has no idea what it is, but Dynasty is like bailing her out, and then all of a sudden she finds out that she is Dynasty. She's the long lost prodigal daughter of Dynasty, and each of those four boys. It's 4 boys. Each of those 4 boys are on opposite sides of the table. So Dynasty has 17 families, so there's 16 families and 1 ruling family. So basically what happens is during decisions, there's 8 good and 8 bad, and so of the 4 boys that are in her harem, 2 are good and 2 are bad, and it's just insane. Like, to have that kind of playoff, it was just phenomenal. 5 stars. Actually, I'd give it 50 stars, to be honest with you. Like, that was just the best. And let's keep it moving, because I realized this is a very, very, very long video. So the next series I read, I kind of then started delving into the bully, like the bully genre kind of thing, like bully romance, which, I mean, I've always kind of liked that, but I think since I started reading bully genres or bully romances, they've really changed to be kind of more on the darker side of morally grey. And you have to be very careful, especially if you're someone who has triggers and is sensitive. There is definitely, you need to take caution if you're going to read these books, because I'm not someone with, like, I do have triggers, obviously, but they're not perhaps as strong as some other people's, and I sometimes found them a bit too much for me. But the Hannaford Prep series, so basically it starts like this. So the first book is Just Drop Out. Then the second book is Make Your Move. The third book is Play the Game. And the fourth book is The End, To the End. And basically, it's another reverse harem, Hannaford Prep is. How can I describe this properly? Well, I liked it. I didn't like the fact that her name was Lips. I thought that was just weird. Why couldn't they call her E? Like, because her name was Eclipse, so for short it was Lips. But I just feel like, why couldn't she be L or E? Lips, it was just weird, like really weird, because I just kept thinking like vagina lips, and it was just weird. It was so weird throughout the whole book, and I just didn't like it. So yeah, that was like my biggest grudge, was the name of her. But basically, so there's a lot in this book to unpack. A lot of bullying, really nasty bullying, a lot of abuse. Yeah, this probably was one of the darker ones I read. This series was probably one of the darker ones I read this month. I didn't fall in love with it. To be honest with you, I got bored throughout the second half of the series. And the only reason why I fast forwarded it to the end, which I don't normally do, to be honest with you. If I do fast forward to the end, I find out the ending. I'll read like the last 2 or 3 pages, and then I'll go back and finish it off from where I am. Unfortunately with this one, it just lost me quite hard at about halfway through the 3rd book. And I was just like, this is bullshit now. And so then I just kind of fast forwarded it to like the last 50 pages of the 4th book and read it. Unfortunately, it wasn't that the brutality of it was what turned me off. It was just too much. And it just kind of lost the plot, because it was like, oh, this is happening, and now this is happening, and now this is happening, and it just lost the plot for me, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't know. J. Bree is a very published author, in the sense that she's got quite a few books and series. I read that this was probably one of her darkest ones, so I'm thinking about giving some other of her series a go, but we'll see about that. The next book I read was Vicious Kings. here we go. Again, another bully romance reverse harem situation. Basically, it starts off with what's her name? I can't remember her name. What was her name? Her mum's name's Camilla. I know that. Grace. So it starts off with Grace getting married, and just as she's about to walk down the aisle, there's all these gunmen invade her wedding, and it's a mafia romance, this series. So all these gunmen invade her wedding, and then she's thrown into the back of a car because 6 years ago her dad picked her up, and they walked away from the mafia life, and so she's grown up with all these guys, and they come back and they get her, and then they're like, basically, they're like, who was shooting at you? Because it wasn't us. And then it kind of, yeah, from there that she kind of then starts to trust them again, and they start to love her again, and they're trying to find out who is infiltrating the Novak syndicate, because obviously it's a mafia romance, so they take that shit really seriously. And then, yeah, I read the second book, which is Ruthless Nights. Basically, what I didn't like about this book was that it jumped, like, from the first book finishing, which finished on a cliffhanger, to the start of the second book. We jumped like months. I'm like, how can you finish on a cliffhanger and jump months? What the hell? And so that was, again, you know, this is why cliffhangers annoy me, because if you're not going to literally pick up from that minute that you've ended the last book, like, to jump months is just silly. And so the third book's still not published yet either, which is just fantastic. But yeah, I think I gave this book 3 stars. It was okay. I don't really feel like the storyline was that grabby, that pulley. I think my thing is hot. Give me a second. Yeah, it was getting hot. Book I read was, I actually like this. We feel more intimate now, don't we? Yes, the next book I read was Laws of Pain, which was the darkest book I've ever read in my life. This book I would extremely caution absolutely anyone who is going to pick it up. It's very prolific. I mean, it focuses on abuse, it focuses on borderline non-consent sex. There's a lot of things in this book that you just go, wow, this is really dark. I mean, I say all this, I did enjoy it. Like, I want to read the second book in the series, but there's a lot to unpack in this book. There's a lot to be weary of in this book. There's a lot to really think twice about before reading this book, because there was a lot that happened. I mean, Story, that's her name. I like the fact that these dark books have really unusual names. But anyway, so basically, Story, it starts off, again, we start off prelude, them in high school, and Story and her stepbrother and his 2 best friends, basically, they rape her. Not in the normal sense, but it still is non-consensual. So that's the start of the book. And then they fast forward it to 3 years later, and Story is on the run because there is a stalker out there who's basically trying to take her virginity and kill her. And so she finds herself going, the only place I'm going to be safe is with Killian, my stepbrother, and his 2 best friends, because they're the worst people I ever know. So she goes to their frat house and takes up the position of being their lady, which means that she is their exclusive sex toy, which it's gross. Like, it is extremely dark, extremely twisted. It still is, okay to read, but it is really, really, I'm not joking, like, a lot of things in this book, I was like, oh my God, how is this okay? you know, they basically, after they sign her up to be their lady, decide amongst the 3 boys that they're going to create a bet. And so every time she does a sexual act for them, they video it, they give points, and whoever gets the most points at the end of a certain amount of time gets to take her virginity. It's incredibly twisted, this book. I say this all with so much caution because it really, really was. And I know that if the wrong person opened that book, it could really cause a lot of damage, you know, just with PTSD moments and stuff like that. So it was good. I liked it, but I really do, like, it needs a lot of caution before reading it. Personally, with my bully romance books, I like to have a bit of sweetness into them. I'm hoping in the second book we'll kind of get that shining through. It wasn't really in this book. But anyway, the last 2 books I've read this month. So the last book I finished, which was called The Silver Swan, looks like this. And it's the Elite Kings Club. It's kind of like Dynasty, but a very much more darker version of Dynasty. Yeah, very much more darker version of Dynasty. But basically, we meet, it's got a lot of riddles too. We meet Madison Montgomery, and she goes to this new high school in the Hamptons, and there's this group of 7 guys. This isn't reverse harem, this book either, but there's a group of 7 guys, and she kind of starts to fall for the head guy, and they're like, we can't tell you what's going on. Her new stepbrother is one of the guys in this crew, and yeah, they're like, we can't tell you what's going on, but there is a secret society, and they try to kill her twice, and they kidnap her, and yeah, like it's very dark. And the second book in the series is the last book I read this month, which is The Broken Puppet. I'm still not sure where I stand with this book or this series. The first book I gave 3 stars. It was extremely slow, and not really anything happened, but it just kept alluding to things that were happening, and so that was really frustrating because you're like, well, why are you constantly alluding but you're not telling me? And you're making the plot line slow. So yes, that is my wrap up of the month. I'm not sure, I think I brought me like 25 books. So that's crazy to think about. I think a few of the disappointments this month was the Texas Cowboy. And unfortunately, I have to say it, but Anarchy was just the quintessential middle book, and that was just frustrating because I know that the next book's gonna take months to come out. But other than that, I really did enjoy my Kindle this month, and I really enjoyed getting to explore this new genre, and I think I found a genre that I'm going to continue to read throughout the year. It's just now I'm gonna double myself up and buy all these books because they were just phenomenal, and I've just found a whole heap of new authors, and I love the fact that they're all self-pubs to support and love and share with you guys these books and recommendations so we can continue to talk about authors that are just blowing their fields. So I'll see you all guys next time.